My name is Joaquin Castro, and I proudly represent my hometown of San Antonio, Texas, here in the United States Congress. And I'm glad to be joined this morning by my colleagues, Representatives Sonia Garcia, Lloyd Doggett, and Al Green. 4 days ago, a group of migrants from Mexico, including a child, were peacefully drinking water out of a reservoir in Hudspeth County, Texas, when they were approached by two men in a truck who began yelling profanity. Without any provocation, the men shot at the group, killing one man and hospitalizing a woman. Mike Shepard, one of the killers, was the warden of the West Texas Detention Center, a privately owned immigration detention facility that has been the site of many human rights violations during his tenure. In 2018, a report from Raices found that officials at the center, including Shepard, had been beaten, taunted, and sexually abused. But instead of holding Shepard responsible for his crimes, the state of Texas and federal immigration authorities did absolutely nothing. Now, a man is dead and a woman is in the hospital from these gunshot wounds. This attack was a hate crime, an act of violence against innocent immigrants committed by a man with a history of attacks on vulnerable people. There was no way for the killers to know who their victims were or what their legal status was. There was no way for them to know whether the people they attack have been in the United States for 5 days or 50 years. Based on the circumstances of this case, it's hard not to imagine that their victims were attacked in cold blood by two men who looked at the color of their skin and decided to make them targets. But this crime is more than just about the Shepards. For years, our state leaders, Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton, and other extreme Republicans have been spewing lies about an invasion at the southern border for their own political gain. Their goal was to spread fear and hate, and it's clear that they've succeeded. As they spout bigotry at the highest levels of our state government, they've empowered violent racists to believe that they can attack immigrants or people who look like immigrants with impunity. Today, we're asking them to stop. We're asking them to stop their violent invasion rhetoric. It has gotten people killed. It got people killed at El Paso, and it just got somebody killed a few days ago. They must stop. On Thursday, authorities arrested the Shepard brothers for murder. While I appreciate their speed, this isn't manslaughter. They arrested the Shepard brothers, but they charged them with manslaughter. This is not a case of manslaughter, it's murder. With the leadership of our colleague, Veronica Escobar of El Paso, we're calling on the Department of Justice to investigate this for what it is, a hate crime. But accountability needs to go beyond the killers themselves. Accountability must extend to the leaders who have fomented violence and hate and unleashed white supremacists to menace innocent people across the state of Texas. And now is the time for all politicians to show which side they're on. Just 3 years ago, as you all know, a madman drove 10 hours to El Paso to gun down 23 people in an effort to stop what he saw, or what he called, the Hispanic invasion of Texas. Now, this new act of hate has left Hispanic families across Texas worried that they or their children could be next. We need our state and national leaders to condemn this act of violence and the culture of hate that made it possible. If they refuse, I'm deeply concerned about the copycat attacks that they could embolden, and the fear that Hispanic families in Texas will be forced to live with. To expand more on the impact of this crime, I want to turn the floor over to my colleague, Sylvia Garcia. Oh, I think you need to unmute there, Sylvia.
Yep, I used to using my Zoom, but I just want to start by saying that what these twin brothers, the Shepard brothers, have done is just premeditated murder. It is a hate crime, pure and simple. And why the prosecutor's office is even thinking of charging manslaughter is beyond me. I mean, just think about it. Now that they've been talked to, they're saying that they were hunting for animals, that they thought it was a javelina. Come on. I'm from South Texas. I know what a javelina looks like and what a human being looks like. You can't tell me you're mistaking a person for a javelina. And when one of them in their exchange, one said to the other, "Did you get him?" He didn't say, did you get the javelina or did you get the animal? He said, did you get him? That clearly tells you that they knew what they were doing. And I think it is just, it's evolved because one of those brothers was a warden at a private LaSalle corrections facility that's been under investigation, that's been subject to being part of abuse and beating up of people. So, and when you really go deep down in this, remember who first called immigrants animals? And that was Donald Trump in the White House. Now you have other mega Republicans here in Texas talking about invasions, the rhetoric of hate, rhetoric of people taking over our country. That has got to stop. This culture and this environment that mega Republicans here in our state, following the lead of Trump from the former president, is just outrageous. It's dehumanizing. It's disgusting, and it's got to stop. And I'm here joining Veronica Escobar, Joaquin Castro, Al Green, Lloyd Doggett, and I'm sure Lizzie Fletcher and Sheila Jackson Lee aren't with us, but if they would be here, they would be agreeing with us. This is hurtful and hateful. The Justice Department must make a full investigation. Department of Homeland Security needs to look at this and look at these private correction facilities and who they're hiring. And we've got to make sure that the FBI also is involved to ensure that we know all the facts. And when I'm calling on Greg Abbott not to do what he did in Uvalde and cover it up, we do not need another Abbott cover up. We need full accountability. We need transparency in this process. Make DPS and the Texas Rangers tell us what's going on and put a stop to it. With that, I yield to my colleague, Lloyd Doggett.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your leadership in convening this session today. Tragically, the shooter now is the ICE facility leader that we wanted held accountable in 2018. My office was called in March of 2018 by RAICES, a public interest group that had investigated the situation in the Sierra Blanca area. That time, the targets were Africans from Somalia. They reported horrible incidents of torture, of sexual abuse, of solitary detention. And before this could be fully explored and they could be engaged in public testimony, they were deported. The issues that existed then, that exist today, are all about race. As Congressman Castro mentioned, this has happened before, not only with this individual, but in El Paso, where an Anglo caught up in the myth of white nationalism traveled 600 miles to kill Hispanics who were allegedly invading our state. This incident should never have happened. This particular person should never have been so engaged with this facility as a warden. But the issues do run so much deeper than one individual who killed one person and seriously injured another, because an atmosphere has been created by politicians here in Texas and in other parts of the country of hate that spurs anti-immigrant hysteria. One of the comments about this particular killing was a reference to those behind in the bush there in Sierra Blanca, not as a person, but as an it, as the affidavit indicates. Especially the same politicians who are spurring anti-immigrant hysteria are refusing to disavow Trump's use of very violent incitement and he has created a climate that is very conducive to violence, treating immigrants who escape a communist dictatorship as pawns, as we have seen recently with those being lured from San Antonio to Martha's Vineyard. Our Governor Abbott treating them in a way of taking them to the vice president's house in Washington, D.C. This is all about viewing these individuals as aliens, as if they came from another planet, as subhuman, as not deserving the protection and respect and dignity that all human beings should have. I believe that now is the time for Governor Abbott, for the first time, to demonstrate a little statesmanship and set a new tone that can protect the lives of people who come into our state, many with legitimate asylum requests. We need a statement now from the governor and some action to show respect and of the humanity of all those who seek refuge here in America. And I yield to our colleague and the chairman of our delegation from Houston, Al Green.
Al, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Congressman Doggett. I thank Congresswoman Garcia and Congressman Castro as well. When I received word of what happened, I was saddened. And I was saddened because I understand that this was predictable. This was predictable. It's predictable because, as Congressman Castro said, when you use language like invasion, what you're doing is identifying people as the other. And then when you say they're illegals, you're reducing them to less than law-abiding citizens. And when you do this to people, you put them in the position of being undesirables, people who ought not be here. And when you do this, you then cause them to be susceptible to the horrible things that people of ill will do when they believe a license to do it has been accorded them. There is no license to treat human beings the way these people were treated. And I understand that there's a camera that picked up some footage, that the truck was identified by way of a camera. That's according to the Texas Tribune. I have the article right here. Texas Tribune is a reputable source. Police investigators checked footage from a nearby camera and identified the truck. Didn't read it exactly as it is, paraphrased it. That footage ought to be released. And if there's any other footage that shows any aspect of this criminality, that footage ought to be released as well. We have to have a thorough investigation, and it has to get beyond the Texas Rangers and the people in Texas to do this. We need the Justice Department to step forward and give us the kind of investigation that can be respected. For too long now, we've had these things covered up in by the local constabulary. It's time for us to take this to a national level. Finally, these things, friends. The governor can do something other than say, according to the Texas Tribune, a terrible tragedy and violence of any kind will not be tolerated. This is more than a terrible tragedy, Governor. There seems to be intentionality here, Governor. When things are done with intentionality, it's more than a simple tragedy. You've got to be forceful. Be as forceful as you would be if an undocumented person had taken a life. Be as forceful as you would be if you thought for a scintilla of a second that people from another country who were here, as you would call them, illegal, if they had taken a life. That's what you've got to do, Governor. And if you do this, Governor, and call a special session of the legislature to deal with this issue as well as those 19 babies who were murdered, 19 babies and 2 teachers murdered at a school, Governor, and you've taken no action. I agree with Congresswoman Garcia. You have been involved, whether wittingly or unwittingly, in a cover-up. And it's time for you, Governor, to take affirmative, strong, meaningful action to do something about these dastardly deeds that are being perpetrated. Finally, this, dear friends, let's get to the root cause of the root cause. The root cause of the root cause is that we in this country have seen our neighbors to the north as business partners and our neighbors to the south as a source of cheap labor. And because we've seen them as a source of cheap labor, they haven't gotten the same respect as our neighbors from the north. That has got to change. I want it to change on my watch. I demand that we make the change and that the governor take affirmative, positive, meaningful action to do something about these tragedies, as he calls them. I would say to you, Governor, you're mistaken. That's a misnomer. That type of moniker is totally inappropriate. These persons acted with intentionality, Governor. Do something other than simply give us rhetoric and then go on back to the campaign trail. I yield back to Congressman Castro. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you, Congressman Green. Thank you, colleagues. We're open for questions now and be glad to take a few questions if the reporters have them. We ask that folks raise their hands. Are there questions?
Hello?
Yep.
Hi, Elliot Spaggett, a reporter for the Associated Press. I just wanted to ask if you had any knowledge of the warden, Mr. Shepard, how long he had been warden, whether he was there during the time that the Raices report, and whether there had been any other reports or audits of his time as warden. I will point out that ICE does periodic inspections. They have some on their website going back to 2019 that are heavily redacted and don't really show any troubling signs. Do you know how long he had been there and whether there had been any other red flags?
Lloyd, you want to speak to that?
He was the warden at the time that Raices did its investigation in 2018. And as I indicated, that investigation never led to really decisive action there because after the Somali immigrants complained of the sexual abuse and torture that had occurred, they were all very rushed in deportation.
Okay, well, that's helpful. You don't know if he had, when he started, 2016, 15, just that he was there at that time of the investigation.
I may be able to get you that information later this morning.
Okay, thank you.
But I think you raise a great question. And the fact is we need more information from the federal government, from this private detention center, and also from the Department of Public Safety. And according to reporting that I read this morning, they've not released whatever records they have.
Well, yeah, there had been some reporting that there were audits raising red flags, but I haven't determined who did these audits and when. Have you come across any? The only one I know of is this Raices investigation. You know,
right? No,
and
we're trying to get that information ourselves right now. So whatever we get, we'll be glad to pass along.
Thank you.
All right, additional question? Oh, Sylvia?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, and I think what's important here is that we know that the Homeland Security Investigative Group also is looking at this. And I think any audit or review or investigation that's been done by a federal agency or federal department or an arm of the federal government, we will try to get our hands on it. And we're calling on Governor Abbott to not cover up on this instant and make sure that there is transparency with anything that is uncovered by DPS, the Texas Rangers, or the local law enforcement officials. We do not want a repeat of Uvalde where Abbott covers everything up. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Additional questions?
Hi, I'm with the Associated Press. I'm so sorry, I missed the beginning of the press conference, so I just wanted to confirm. Do we know for a fact that it was Michael Shepard who was the warden during 2018 when the report from Raices came out?
Yeah, it is correct. He was the warden in 2018.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Any other questions, y'all? Please.
Yes, my name is Juhi Verma. I'm a reporter with the Houston Chronicle. My question is about the migrants. Do we know how long they'd been in the country, where they'd come from, and how many of them had been in the group when the shooting occurred?
I don't know those. This is Sylvia Garcia. I don't know those details, but I think what's important here is that they were just stopping to get water.
Right, of course.
You know, they were just peacefully getting water. They did not do anything that we're aware of to provoke or elicit this kind of reaction from these two people. It's basically, again, you know, somebody who two twin brothers who think it's okay to shoot at people that have a dark skin and that may be may be, and their words, not mine, because I hate the word, may be illegals. That is outrageous. It's bad enough that some of us feel like, there's problems with law enforcement and driving while brown. Now apparently you can't even drink water while brown. This is putting racial profiling at a totally different level. It's inhumane. It's hate. It's targeting and treating people again as the former twice impeached president said, treating migrants like animals. It's inhumane. It's ungodly.
Right.
This is Al Green, Juhi. I just share this with you. The news reports indicate that there were 13 Mexican immigrants that crossed the border and that they stopped to drink water at a reservoir south of Sierra Blanca. So that is a good starting point. And I agree with what Congresswoman Garcia said. They were merely drinking water, which by no standard is a crime. And if they're asylees, they're here doing what we expect asylees to do because we wrote the laws. If we don't like what the asylees are doing, then we ought to change the laws.
Okay.
And also, Julie, I want to be clear, and we've made the point, but this invasion rhetoric is dangerous not only to undocumented immigrants, but to all Hispanics in Texas, because you become a target because of the invasion rhetoric. When these guys pulled up on these people, they didn't ask them, oh, let me see your papers. They started shooting at them. And that truth was borne out in El Paso, where there were a bunch of American citizens who were killed. And by the way, also, I believe somebody who was over from Germany, had been visiting from Germany, from out of the country. So this invasion rhetoric, I mean to say, isn't just dangerous to undocumented folks. It's dangerous to the Hispanic community in Texas and really to all Texans.
Okay, thank you.
More questions, y'all? No? Okay. Colleagues, you have any closing words that any remarks you'd like to make?
Joaquin, if I might, this is Lloyd. Donald Trump has repeatedly incited violence. And each of us in this delegation and our colleagues saw the result of that incitement at the United States Capitol in January of 2021. The dehumanizing, the demeaning of people who seek refuge in this country, many of whom are people of color, is what contributed to the violence that we see here. Their refusal to condemn white nationalism for all the phoniness that it is. They're standing silent when incidents like this happen, except to refer to it as a tragedy. These are the horrors of the Abbott-Trump hatred and enabling of violence. Among those who've been empowered with official duties and among Texans, they stir up harm with this destructive lie of white supremacy. We need the federal investigation. We need the prompt prosecution of those who engaged in hate crime, and to ensure that people with this kind of history are not involved in in playing any role in detention facilities or in contact with immigration. And I yield back.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you to the journalists who tuned in. Again, just to recap, the murderer must be held accountable for murder. Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton, and other MAGA Republicans who've been using the invasion rhetoric have gotten people killed, just got somebody killed, and will likely get more people killed if they continue this hateful rhetoric, and we're calling on them to stop. DPS and other state agencies and federal agencies must be as transparent as possible so that we have all the facts in front of us. And then finally, we are asking the Department of Justice for a full investigation and also requesting all records that we can get, and we'll be glad to share those with you as we get them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.